Yo, 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 this is Dorky Diggity Dave, and today I'm here with Luke, the senior producer on Marvel Contest of Champions, and so I'm here to ask just a couple of questions, but the very first question is, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. It's been an awesome day so far. It's been real busy, but fans are kind of showing up.
All right. We've got a little Morningstar action going on here.
Yeah? She's tough.
She is tough. She is tough. I've got wrecked multiple times so far, as it is. All right, so I got some questions.
For sure.
So how did MCOC get started, or more so, how did you get involved with MCOC? Like, what's the whole driving force behind the game?
When it originally started, we kind of identified that as a company, we knew we wanted to do something with the Marvel license. We were kind of started initial talks then, and we were kind of throwing pitches their way. How kind of initially started was identifying, hey, there's not a lot going in the fighting genre, there's a handful of competitors, but there's no like solid Marvel fighting game on mobile right now. And that was kind of the major driving force behind, when we came out at launch. A lot of the early prototypes, tried out a lot of different gameplay mechanics and, trying to find a nice mix between, something that's very accessible to a lot of people on mobile devices, but at the same time has a lot of depth and mastery in terms of combat and RPG elements. And it's kind of like, it's come a long way in like 3 years to where we are now. Yeah, it's been pretty sick. I joined on gameplay mechanics and, trying to find a nice mix between, something that's very accessible to a lot of people on mobile devices, but at the same time has...
That's crazy. Well, I mean, everyone's playing the game, hours and hours and hours and hours a day. So, so with that, who is your favorite champion?
I gotta say, like, right now, my favorite champion is Medusa.
Medusa?
I was lucky enough to spin, I rolled one crystal, got a 5-star Medusa, awakened her, took her for like 30, 40, and she is just a beast.
So, a Kabam employee has to roll crystals. You have to spin crystals. You can't just, like, go in the pot, get your own. You gotta be, all right.
That's something not a lot of people know. It's not something we really emphasize, but it's, when we play the game, we play it like you guys play it. Like, it's, I can just give myself every character. That doesn't really give me a good perspective on, like, progression of the game, how it feels to, like, try and acquire, like, catalysts, characters, and stuff like that. So, when it comes to, when a new character drops, we're either rolling the 5-star shards or we're putting our money down to go and acquire them.
Nice. Yeah, because, that's what I hear, like, going around the community sometimes, people are like, hey, do these guys even play the game? Do they even know, like, how much this part sucks or how great this part is? Yeah. And so that's really great to hear. So, who is my favorite champion?
How many guesses do I get? I'm like sure.
You only get one. There's there's really only
There's
one.
Like 2 champions in my head, and I'm like, it's Iceman?
It is Iceman.
I was like one between like Voodoo and Iceman. I've seen you have a ton of videos of Voodoo like blasting like highly buff notes. So I was always like, all right, so Iceman.
I did. Well, only one of them has a song so far.
That's true.
So far. All right, so what is the process from start to finish on adding a new champion to the game? Like, from cradle to, well, not really the grave, but from the cradle to the plate.
Yeah. It's a lengthy process. So the first portion is obviously kind of like what champion are we picking, right? And we do road mapping all the time, kind of like look super far out and try and identify what are the champions we want to release in game. And a lot of that is kind of built around, obviously, we do a lot of big things with movies, so when we're looking out for the next year, we're blocking out, okay, well, what are the big Marvel theatrical movies coming out? And then talking to Marvel about who are the big characters going to be in that movie, both heroes and villains. That kind of sets our high-level beats for kind of our roadmap, and then in between there, when we're selecting other champions, it's kind of like dealer's choice. A lot of what we do is, we're checking Reddit, we're checking our forums, we're checking social media to see, like, what characters people are demanding, and then we're also looking at our roster and seeing, like, who are we missing? Who are champions we want to release? And that kind of fills the slots in between. And then there's also like a narrative creative process where it's like, all right, well, we're releasing these 2 champs in this month. How do those fit into a story? What's the story we're going to tell in the battle realm? And for movies, it's easier because, you have a lot of backstory with them. But for other characters, we have a dedicated quest team, and obviously our director, Gabe, who, like in the lab, and they're trying to figure out, like, okay, well, how does Howard the Duck and Hyperion, what's their story in the battle room together? And they're kind of figuring that out.
Oh, nice.
Past that, we get into like the actual production. So we got through creating concepts for characters for Marvel to approve, because we kind of have our own unique art style when it comes to characters. Right. And then after that, it gets right into brainstorming. Our modeling team starts based on the concept and they get going. But then we start going into brainstorming on, okay, well, for a character like, let's use Thanos, for example. Okay. We're talking about, okay, well, what are his powers? How do we want to see him fight? What are the key moves we want to see him do? Sometimes when it's the actual characters, we're like, what are cool scenes in that film that we want to try and portray in our game? And so we go from there. We have animators, designers, technical artists, VFX artists. The whole team comes together to kind of brainstorm how we're going to build that stuff out, what's the tech we need, and then we just hit the ground running. Animators start going, our character designers start working on abilities, gameplay engineers are hooking everything up. As we get close to our final product, our VFX team comes in, do all the sweet effects when you're seeing moves go off, and then audio, and then obviously testing. Nice. For all abilities, animations, visuals, and everything.
And this process takes about a year or so?
For a character, I'd probably say, for each individual character, I'd probably be willing to say it takes between 3 to 4 months.
3 to 4 months.
Because that whole process of brainstorming and iteration. So, when we're animating a character like Thanos or Nightcrawler, every week or two we're doing like a review and like we're taking a look at everything. The whole team comes together, looks at an individual character and it's like, does this feel like Nightcrawler? Is this what we want to see? Does this line up with the abilities we want triggered in this? Just checking on it week to week. But overall, it takes probably about 3 to 4 months to build an individual character.
Wow. And so when it comes to like different tiers, because I know it's not really like an MCOC thing to have tiers, but in the community you'll have like God tier, regular tier, and then there's just some that just don't do anything particularly special in terms of like late game mechanics and things like that. Is that like part of the process? Because there was a huge excitement for Carnage.
Yes.
When Carnage came out, and he looks great. The animation's fantastic. But his performance is a little less than stellar in terms of comparison to, like, say, Stark Spidey or some of the other heavy hitters. Is that part of the decision process? Like, this is going to look great, but he's just not going to do as much damage as...
It's kind of like a give and take, and obviously we have to balance characters. I think in the case of Carnage, obviously, like we tune him lower than what we wanted to. So it's something we're always evaluating is, when we're deciding on abilities or like the power level of the character, we're trying to make sure they always have a role, and that they're competitive. And obviously, we're looking at Carnage, and down the road, we're probably going to take a look at what are the things we could do to buff him. And obviously, you look at our entire roster of like 100 plus characters. There's some characters that have also kind of fallen out of the meta. You have that top 10, top 20, where it's like you get that character, you're ranking them up. And then you have characters that even some of our older ones, like we talk about like guys like Ant-Man and Luke Cage, who they don't really have a place right now in the meta. Like they're tanky, but they don't deal enough damage. And we're always thinking about that. Eventually what we want to do is we want to get to a place where we can do kind of consistent meta updates, like a lot of other competitive games do, like League, Dota, where on a regular basis we can get to that point.
Right.
A lot of people think we're like a massive team of like hundreds of people, but in reality it's like our team's actually quite small, so for us it's about getting to that point where we can. That's something we're striving towards. But when it comes to, balancing characters, our character designers themselves are always looking at, okay, well, what's the current meta? Is there something we need to introduce to kind of provide counters?
Yeah. And
you kind of start to see that with some of the newer characters that are coming out where, okay, well, we know regen's really big, so let's start putting in champions that can either heal, block, or reverse. So Guillotine was a good example of that, where in like year one, regen champions were like god tier, so Deadpool, Wolverine. So we're like, okay, we know this is a strong meta, what can we do? Well, Guillotine reverses that and you damage yourself with regen. You kind of see that pattern a little bit. But being that the dev cycle is like 3 to 4 months for a character, we have to plan so far ahead, and then hopefully the meta's still the same when we get there.
Got it. So it's really just a matter of, so it's not like you saw that Carnage wasn't as strong as you wanted, and so it just takes time to be able to get to it, and because you've got all these other people like in the rotation already ready to go. Got it.
When it comes to feedback and stuff like that, like we released Carnage and we saw the feedback. We've been reading through that, so it's something that's in the back of our minds that we get around to and make Carnage what people expect. Right?
All right. That'll be that. I think everyone who has a Carnage at this point that hears this will just be a little more comforted, with their acquisition. Okay, so. Are there any champions on the cutting room floor, like champions that you brought in, or just like, what, forget it, we're not going to do this?
Yeah, for sure. And obviously, like, sometimes we release a build, like especially in the older days, and people would data mine the build, not supposed to, but obviously the real models and stuff like that we had from way back of characters that never made it in the game. We had a reskin of Scarlet Witch that we were going to do at one point. Red Skull is still a character that we haven't released yet, but people have seen the model. There's a handful of champions, and less so now, like there's usually now when we're going through a road mapping process, like we decide on a character, they're going in.
Okay.
But in some of our earlier days, we was kind of trying to pick and choose who the best characters were at the time, and then also building that relationship with Marvel of like, who do you want us to be releasing? And now we're at a point where it's like, if somebody gets their name on the roadmap list, that character's coming out, no problem.
Nice.
So there are some on the cutting room floor, there are some that, maybe one day we'll kind of resurrect and redo.
Nice.
Yeah.
All right. And is that Weapon X is part of that as well?
Weapon X Wolverine?
Yeah.
Yep. And so that was kind of like a dual thing. Like we knew we wanted to build Weapon X Wolverine, and he was fightable as like a boss in one of like the one shots. But the reason we didn't release him as a playable character at the time was at the time we just didn't have a cap to do new moves, new abilities and stuff like that. And you've been playing for a while. Obviously, all our champions nowadays come out and they have brand new animations, brand new abilities. We don't like reusing, and users don't like that. You get a new champion, you want to see.
I'm personally glad for that.
Yeah, and it's something like we heard the community and we're like, they don't like these.
Yeah.
So we stopped doing variants, and every character we release now is new. So not to say that like obviously Weapon X Wolverine is a different visual style of Wolverine, but if we were to build him one day, everything would be brand new.
So, is there a chance that Miss Marvel and Captain Marvel might have some differences? Iron Man, Superior Iron Man,
sure.
We'll start getting some variants.
It kind of goes back to like that discussion of it's something that we're pushing towards. We don't really have a date on it yet of like when we're going to start that stuff, but we know like we want to do regular meta updates to tuning and balancing and new abilities, but also we hear the community. There's those champions from like way back at launch that shared a lot of animations, and at the time, because of how small our team was, to get those champions out and release the game overall, we had to share animations between some of them. But we look at those, like even one of my favorite characters is obviously Punisher, and when we first released him, he was sharing a bunch of moves, and it's like it kills me inside.
Yeah.
And so I'm like one of those guys who's always pushing for like one day we'll get to him and we'll get him.
And you did, and it was great. I like Punisher a lot now. Okay, so is there a chance that you're ever gonna have like voiceovers for like specials, like champion specific? Like Spidey. It's just like just like Branch is the guy or whatever.
Right now, there's no plans to do voiceovers and stuff like that. I know we've gotten feedback on that before of like, why don't characters talk or make any kind of like vocal sounds when they're in combat or in intros. Right now, there's no plans to. I think a part of that is localization because we're Marvel. Our game itself is like in tons of countries across the world. We localize the game in I think like 12 to 15 different languages. So unless we can localize those for all regions, we kind of feel it all.
Got it. All right. So, have you considered adding in a 7-star Diggity Dave to the game?
We're not even. We just announced 6 stars.
6 stars.
I think a 7-star Dave would be maybe a little too powerful.
A little too powerful.
To like rein that in a little bit,
or maybe like a special monthly event where
you show up in the quest.
I show up in the quest. Even down in the bottom is like an animated guy that's just like good luck.
Talking, Maybe one day maybe the Grandmaster needs his new partner.
All right.
That when Gabe comes back, the art director will start talking story.
When he comes back, all right.
We'll start workshopping it.
That sounds good. All right. So one of the most popular fan requests in the game is, just in my opinion anyway, is having the ability to play peer-to-peer against another, someone else. Is that like in the plans to be able to play against another actual human?
Currently, we don't have any plans to do live PvP, but it's not to say it's something we haven't thought about and talked about and even researched. Obviously, the biggest thing that comes up when you're talking about live PvP, like if you played Street Fighter, if you played Mortal Kombat, KI, networking latency can be a huge issue in fighting games. And even when you're talking about console versus console, you can get networking issues where guys are on like cable, Ethernet, like the T1 connections. And so when it comes to mobile, the tough part there is performance and latency, obviously for us. Like the reason we don't do that is because you have people across thousands of different devices, across tons of different networks with all varying speeds. So, you don't want to have a bad experience because I have a bad connection, right? Like, we go head to head and my poor connection impacts your ability to play, and that's just not a good experience.
Got it.
But it's not something to say, like, we haven't thought about it. We've definitely thought about it, and no plans yet, but something we're looking to for the future.
All right. Okay, last question is one of my favorite fighting mechanics in games is being able to juggle and just like hit something at the right time. And what I would always love to do is land a heavy attack and then shoot your special and land it at just the right time, because it's a show of skill and it's an extra layer to the game.
That's pretty sick. I like that idea.
Is that something I've just brought up that no one's talked about?
That's actually a first,
because I would love to do that.
Like, obviously we have some moves where it's like animations where the opponents get kicked up in the air and they kind of do it from there, but the idea of comboing and from whether it's like heavy attacks and stuff like that and specials is a new one. That's cool. I like that, actually.
All right.
I'll take that back to the team. We'll see what they say.
I like that a lot, and I would love to be able to combo into a heavy at some point. Again, skill based. Just get the right timing and get a guaranteed heavy. I think would be just as good as parry. Like you've got to master the skill. You've got to be able to do it
for sure.
And I think being able to those two things are like on my wish list. So
All right,
all right.
I like that. That's sick.
All right, Luke. Thank you very, very much for taking the time.
Good talking.
Yeah.